Welcome to the Ambitious Introvert podcast, created especially for introverts, empaths, and highly sensitive entrepreneurs to help you build, grow, and scale a successful, sustainable business. I'm your host, Emma-Louise Parks, business and mindset coach for ambitious introverts. After 17 years working as an air traffic controller, the ultimate fast-paced, high-stimulus, extrovert-friendly role, my mission now is to show introverts that they too can create big results and success because of who they are, not in spite of it. I focus on introvert-friendly business and marketing strategy to help you switch overwhelm for clarity, confidence, and clients. Hello, welcome to this week's episode of the Ambitious Introvert podcast. I'm Emma-Louise, and I'm joined today by my good friend Analena Fuchs. And obviously, it's always great when I'm joined by a friend on the podcast because it's a great opportunity for us to catch up. But chatting to Analena today is particularly special because she was one of my early guests when the podcast first started back in 2020. And we actually connected through the podcast. So I was asking people if they could recommend someone that was a human design expert that could come and share a little bit about the modality. And someone I knew said, "Oh, I know this girl. I'm in a program with her and she's doing human design. And I think she'd be really great for your podcast. She's an introvert." And it was Analena. So she connected us. We had a coffee. I interviewed her for the podcast. Then I ended up working with her to understand my human design. And then we've just been great friends and supporters of each other's businesses ever since. So I'm really thrilled to bring her back after 2 years or however long it's been since her episode aired to discuss the gene keys today. So if you've been around for a minute, you'll have heard me talking a lot about human design and the impact that it's had on my own life, my energy, my business, all of the things. And the gene keys are a different modality, but they are similar in that they use our birth time, date, etc. And they're astrologically based, but they're kind of different, like same, but different. So the gene keys is definitely a slower modality. It leaves a lot of room for interpretation and contemplation and all of that good stuff, which I love. So Analena herself has started studying this and really combining that with her human design knowledge. So please listen in to understand a little bit more about what the gene keys is, how you can use them to understand yourself, where you can start learning about yourself, how you can access them. We talk a little bit about my chart, and Analena looks at my chart while we're talking, just to give some kind of context around that. And the other thing we chat about is why all of us has to be welcome. And there's this misconception about shadow and shadow work and, oh my gosh, the shadow is a bad thing. And it's really not. It's a part of us that we need to understand and integrate to feel our whole selves. So we touch a little bit on that as well, which I think is an important topic. So anyway, on with the interview. I hope you enjoy listening to Analena and her beautiful, calming voice just as much as I enjoyed interviewing her. And I really hope that if you're not already learning about it, that this piques your interests a little bit into the gene keys. It's very lovely to have you back because you were one of my very first podcast guests when I launched almost 3 years ago.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Always love talking to you.
And I have been on your podcast since, and I've had numerous readings with you. My clients have had numerous readings, and we've collaborated and connected and all the beautiful good things. So I'm very grateful to have you in my professional life.
Yeah, likewise, like we said, right? We are somehow meant to meet.
Yes, all meant to be, all very aligned. And it's crazy. Like we were saying, we feel like old friends, not that we're old, but that feeling sometimes. And, you know, I think so much of this, obviously, we're going to talk about gene keys, but with our human design and energy and those types of people, it's when it's just very easy. You meet someone and straight away you're like, oh yeah, like this is just like coming home.
Yeah, no, that's really how it felt. There's something there that just feels like you just know that person is aligned for you in your lives. And it has been beautiful, our connections and how we have introduced each other to other people and always think about each other. It's quite magical.
Yeah.
And I love that because in my Gene Keys, I think I mentioned that to you, there's one energy for me, which is all about the people that I get to meet. It has actually to do with prosperity for me. So you're definitely in that fractal of people that I get to meet and create, prosperity and abundance for the collective.
Oh, what a great intro to the Gene Keys. So everyone that has listened to the podcast for any amount of time knows that I love human design. I'm very into that. It's something I use with my one-on-one clients. I reference it quite a lot. I make fun of my 1-3 profile because always learning, always researching, all of the things. I've kind of made peace with it now. It's like, so that's the empowerment, right? Now that I understand that I actually want to read 3 books on a subject rather than take any action, I can stop myself doing it because I can be like, just read 1 book and then take action, and it balances it out, right?
Yeah, it's the awareness, right?
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
But so I've talked about human design a few times. You came on in the early days and discussed it. Erin was on discussing it as well. But I'm really excited to talk about Gene Keys because Gene Keys to me is like, it's the perfect modality because depth is one of my words of the year. And I love to learn and I love depth. And I love this idea of slowly taking in information and it builds up and we integrate it and kind of apply it bit by bit, which is basically everything the Gene Keys is, right?
Yeah, really funny because we are actually launching a mastermind called Depth, and that's what we're going to do. Go deep into everything and slow and, so we live in this world of information, like you said, especially in one line, right? It's like we can get so caught up in the information. We can always overdo it. And so the Gene Keys are all about less information, but going really deep and at a slow pace. However, the transformation that I have found from my own experience is the greatest I have ever experienced. So, for our mind, I think that is a little bit probably skeptical at first. What do you mean? Because there's so much information. We have not been so conditioned. We need to know, especially social media, right? It's this constant need to, I'm missing something. I need to figure this out. And it's all on the externals, on the outside. And with the Gene Keys, it's just such a soothing and relaxing way of transforming and becoming who you really are, or allowing to be who you really are, right? We need to more unbecome, not become. And so let go of who we're really not. And that's really where the Gene Keys come in.
I think there's been a real trend in the last few years, say like 2019 to maybe last year, of quick fix. And, a lot of people doing things like RTT, NLP, EFT, and like selling single sessions, like, you're going to like cure your limiting beliefs and this kind of thing. And like, I use some of those modalities and I really rate them. But, what I have seen time and time again is it's the repetition of things, or it's the time to integrate it and be consistent with it that really produces the best results, like the long lasting results. And I think there's also been this trend of like, I'll get a human design reading for 60 minutes and then that's it. Like, I know my design. And what I really love about Gene Keys is like, you could have a 60-minute reading and you wouldn't even scratch the surface. It's not like, you have that reading and you have all the information and you can just go off and live your best life. And that might upset some people, but I actually like that. I like that I get to ponder on it. Like, I like that I get to go away and think on what I've read.
Yeah, it is. And question, do you want me to explain like a little bit what the Gene Keys are and how it's different from human design?
Yeah, I probably should. And I was thinking that. And thank you for interjecting, because we could just easily talk about like the merits of it and they get to the end and be like, we didn't tell you what they actually are. So
no, because I can't forget it also with human design and the Gene Keys, because for me, it's just like, whoa, it's common sense, right? Like I can't forget that people may be like, well, what are you talking about?
What actually is this key that you keep discussing? Yeah. So please give us a very basic overview for the people that are like, what is this?
Yeah. So you already know about human design. If not, go back to the other episodes, right? So the gene keys. So human design is more masculine in a way that it's more logical and how we're supposed to do things and stuff, right? The strategy and authority, like how to make decisions. Now, the gene keys, we don't have the 5 types like in human design, which is also in a way a great thing because oftentimes people put themselves into boxes with human design if they're not careful. I really make an effort to convey people that's the opposite of what it's about, but still it happens. So with the gene keys, that is not there. We have, so I call it the gene keys, and there are 64 gene keys, which is basically a deeper dive into each of the 64 gates that we have in human design. And there is like a path, a sequence, how you're supposed to go through your unique gene keys. There are some of the gates that also need human design chart. Not all of them, but several ones of them. And the gene keys, so there is a chapter in the book by Richard Wright. He's the person that brought it into the world. He was before that all deep into human design. And basically, it's almost like a little book in itself for each one of the gene keys. And it's so freaking deep. And you know this, I know we have talked about this. There's nothing really that you have to do with it or figure out. It's literally just when you read your gene keys. Like, for example, for you, the 64, right, is in your incarnation class. For me, it's the gate 13 at my conscious sun. And in the gene keys, it's called the life's work. And it's this, like, you read it and you let it be. And every time you may read it actually 100 times or listen to Richard Wright's audio. And every time it's like, when you read a book and every time something else sticks, it's like, oh, this makes sense. This is me. And to be honest, in the very beginning, when I first encountered the gene key, I was like, what is this? I was like, I cannot relate to this. This is too complex, philosophical and stuff. And now I'm like, oh my God, this is the juiciest, most transformative thing I've ever read. And it explains the entire universe, how everything works, how we humans tick and function, how including the shadows. And so it just activates something inside of you. And you may actually get really tired just from reading or listening to one of your gene keys because it actually
when I read it. I fall asleep and it's not boring. I just want to say that. So it's fascinating, but I feel it a few pages in and my eyes are closed and I'm like, oh, I'm so tired.
Yeah. So there's something magical. And he also goes into each gene key has a specific amino acid. So there's a lot of science in that as well. And then every gene key has what we call a shadow, a gift, and a city. And the shadow is something that we all experience. If we are not having the courage to face the shadow and accept that part of us, which is part of being a human, but this is what we often resist and try to push away, especially with this mindset work, right? Only through embracing the shadow, we can actually release the gift. And the gift is really when you are living more in alignment in your purpose, right? Even though your shadow is part of your purpose as well, right? It's like a coin. It belongs together. It's not separate. And then the city is like the highest level of consciousness, which we get kind of sparks of here and there. And it's not like, oh, I'm going to be done with my shadow at some point and I'm only going to be my gift. It's like a dance. But the way that the shadow kind of impacts you in your life becomes less and less strong. So over time, you actually get to love this part of you and you get to live more fully in this gift frequency, right? And can really shine this out into the world. So yeah. And what's so beautiful with the gene keys is that the way to the transformational tool, like you were mentioning RTT or whatever limiting belief work, framework we have hundreds, right? It's called the art of contemplation in the gene keys. And that is just the most beautiful, incredible thing. There's also a little book by Richard Wright called The Art of Contemplation. I highly recommend it. It's probably the best book I've ever read. So it's very small, but there's so much freaking wisdom in that book that if you really dedicate some time to that and follow these simple practices that though require a lot of patience, and you might maybe like, but I need to be doing something. I need to figure this out, right? There's so much incredible magic that can arise from that. So, and it's like a much more feminine approach, so to say, than compared to human design, and merging the two has been incredibly powerful for myself, also working with clients. And it's like, I'm actually going through one of the sequences right now, the Venus sequence, and we are contemplating one gene key per month, just one a month.
Yeah.
And Emma-Louise, that has been literally the most powerful for me in terms of transformational work that I've really done in a really long time. It's incredible when we allow ourselves to go slow but go really into the depth of one particular energy.
Love it. And it's that irony of, which you were familiar with anyway, because you named your podcast after it, of actually slowing down to speed up our results, to be able to, whether you call it quantum leap or collapse time, or whether it's just like, how can I get the things I want faster, or how can I enjoy life sooner than feeling like it will be when I do this or when I've achieved this. That actually by slowing down and integrating this, this information and actually embodying it, I'm going to say, I heard a great quote on a podcast in January, and it was about how you can just keep taking more information and more knowledge, but if you don't integrate it and embody it, then it never becomes wisdom. You're just like collecting knowledge and not doing anything with it.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, instantly I committed to only rereading books that I've already read this year.
I know, and I saw it on your newsletter, right?
I've read so many books, and I'm like, how many of them have I actually integrated? Or maybe I read a book 10 years ago that I thought, wow, this is amazing, but I'm a completely different person now than 10 years ago. So like, how can I go back? And the Gene Keys kind of reminds me of that. It's not just like, oh, you're this type, there you go, so go and do this. It's really more about like, it feels luxurious.
It is. It really is, and it's also very simple in essence. It takes out the complexity of everything, because I think oftentimes with human design people, and a lot of human design, I'm obsessed with it, but I see often people get stuck in their head and they're trying to figure it out. And that's the opposite of what it's about. So Gene Keys and what you mentioned about the wisdom, it's really the energy of the 48, the Gene Key on the gate and then human design, which is like in the lower expression, is like a one line where we need to take in information because the fear of inadequacy, like we never know enough. But the city actually in the Gene Keys is wisdom, because you go into the depth of one particular thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's really where the magic lies. And it's absolutely incredible when you allow yourself to go at a slow pace. And what I want to say, actually, my podcast is called The Art of Slowing Down. It used to be called The Art of Slowing Down to Quantum Leap, but I intentionally dropped the to Quantum Leap just because I don't want people to get the impression, like, I want to have something, I want to go fast, so let me slow down. Because then I have kind of an agenda behind it. I'm slowing down to Quantum Leap because I realized that myself. And I just want to slow down to slow down. Like, expect nothing, be open to receive everything. Because I don't know when I'm supposed to quantum leap. I don't know what is meant for me. That's beyond the mind. Because I think for me, this whole manifestation work is oftentimes so much nonsense, because we are thinking about things that we know, which is 0. I don't know, 1 divided by a million % or something like that. Right? And we set goals from what we know. With the Gene Keys and surrendering to the divine will of what is really meant for us, which the mind can probably not comprehend, we tap into the unknown, the quantum field of possibilities. That is 99.9999999% of what's possible. So, right, for me, it's kind of like, why would I waste all my precious energy to focus on this little goal that I'm trying to accomplish? And look, sometimes I have goals come up that come from my heart space that I just know I'm meant to be going there and this is what I want, but it comes easy and effortless. But anytime I have to put effort in it and try to figure out, I know it's not coming from trusting and surrendering what's in my hands good.
It's so interesting because my coach is currently doing a degree in energy medicine. So she's sharing a lot of this with us in the mastermind. And it's like real heavy, like degree level textbook quantum physics thing, but it's fascinating. I love it, obviously, one line. And, she has this great diagram that she shares with us, and it's about like the perception. And it's got all of these, it's got like a cone. I should probably link it in the show notes because I'm going to butcher this description, but it's got these little dots in this little cone of perception, and then everything else is clear. And she's like, the dots are what you know. So you can't escape here if you're only focusing on what you know. But there's, like you say, 99% of it is clear and we don't know what it is and we don't know what the possibilities are.
Yeah. And I find that with the gene keys, because we're so letting go of the agendas of the mind and we're just activating in our DNA who we really are through just this contemplation. And it's also this contemplation is just about, it's not like you have to set aside an hour and sit down and contemplate. You contemplate as you go through life, as you wash your dishes, as you go for a walk. Like even right now, I can be in contemplation talking to you and just observe and, be more mindful with everything that I do. And there's one beautiful thing I want to share from the book, from The Art of Contemplation, because there's something about a pause. Within The Art of Contemplation, there are the different things, like one is pause. And so Richard Rudd is talking about a cab driver, how, whenever there's a red light, he would get really upset and like, there's another red light and I don't have time for this. And through the kind of reframe of The Art of Contemplation, he learned that life is giving me pause, and that totally, just that alone changed the person's life. Because now every time there was a red light, which probably happens like numerous times as a cab driver during a day, he would now allow himself to just be and allow and receive the pause. And that's when we can receive insights and these breakthrough moments, right? So
I have to be very careful it's more of a habit now, but I had to be very intentional to cultivate the habit of not consuming too much as a one line. And I would always be like, let me play a podcast while I'm driving, or let me listen to a podcast while I'm walking, or, let me put an audiobook on while I'm cooking. And those activities now, I'm like, no, I don't consume during those times because I consume a lot during the day. I'm consuming in my business, in my client's business. And, I love to read. Obviously, I read every night before bed, having conversations with people, and there's so much information. I'm like, I have to make these intentional spaces where I don't, and they're where I have the best ideas, or where I contemplate, or where something intuitive drops in, because I've created the space for it. I think as much as the shadow of me would be like, consume more, learn more, get more knowledge, it doesn't leave that gap to actually like listen for the things that we're not necessarily going to hear.
Yeah. No, and it actually talks about this. So for example, running, you can contemplate while you run outside, but not while you listen to an audiobook. You're not contemplating.
Yeah.
Because you are right with the audiobook and listening to stuff. So that's a really good point. Yeah, it's a pretty magical journey. And so for anybody that's interested about the gene keys, right? Because like, okay, how do I do this? Where do I get started? Right. So there are different sequences. And there's the activation sequence in the gene keys, which is what you want to start with, because that's more about your purpose, who you're being, to really understand yourself better. And then after the activation sequence, there's the Venus sequence, which I'm doing right now. This is, oh my God, best thing ever. It's like all about relationships, about emotions. It's so incredible. It's all about opening your heart. It's really what the Venus sequence is about. And then the last sequence, which most people want to do first, is called the Pearl sequence. It's all about prosperity. And it's beautiful also for people that are entrepreneurs and stuff like that. But, and they are connected, of course. But the more you follow the sequence, of course, if you intuitively want to do one, by all means do that. But there is a lot of magic when you allow yourself to go in order, because he received it for a reason, in a certain sequence. Had to go through those gene keys.
So I've looked deeply into my activation sequence. I haven't moved on yet because I still feel like I know there will always be more, but I kind of read it and then I've stepped away from it a bit and then I've come back to it. What I would say for anyone listening is if you look at the book, it could be very overwhelming because it is not a short book. However, there are websites that you can get your profile for free if you just want to dip into it, and that actually give just a really simple but clear overview so you can get an idea if it resonates with you. And I will link some resources to that in the show notes.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, just the genekeys.com website, you can get your free profile. Exactly.
So I'm going to share this as well in the show notes because Annalena's screen sharing with me, but clearly we are not a video podcast. And she's sharing my chart.
Yeah. So is there anything in your chart that you want to know a little bit about? Or
what I've always found very interesting is that I've got 63 and 64, which are obviously the last two. And I'm line 1 in both of them. So again, all of the information. But when I read them and contemplate them, it makes so much sense based on where I am in life and what I do. And that one feels like, well, yeah, this makes so much sense. But the shadow of impatience in my radiance is the thing that I feel like is a lot of my life's work, because I'm, not the most patient person. And also there's so much in there about like consistency and routine, especially for my health and my radiance. And that's something that I resist quite a lot. And if I've talked about this, I think maybe because I did shift work for so long, it like routine does not come naturally to me, but I know that it's important and I'm definitely getting better at cultivating that. But yeah, if you've got any insights on that would be amazing.
Yeah. Like you say, right? So the radiance gene key is all about what keeps you healthy. And you have it in the 3 line. The 3 line is all about experimenting with that, right? So also be really gracious with yourself that nothing ever is a mistake, right? Like you have learned what you have learned, and you may still maybe feel like you're not at where you're at. So I would really dive into the impatience. Really allow yourself to feel that. Don't run away from the impatience, right? Like almost like a little baby or something like that. That is like where you're really curious. You can use your curiosity from the 63 a little bit, right? Like, or the inquiry to kind of like, how can I love this part of myself? And also like, as you go, like, this is what the Art of Contemplation is really about, that I would honestly for you, like take a whole month and make this, put all the books aside, just focus on that patience, impatience kind of stance for yourself. How does this play out in your daily life, moment to moment, right? And you may have, just by being with it, without an agenda, right? Without like, I have to fix it. No, it's not from this side. It's just about loving that part of you and being just very compassionate and observing and like, oh, wow, like, here I go, just go to my car and do this. And I'm so impatient, or whatever this may be for you. Right. And at some point you're going to have this like epiphany or breakthrough moment where you're like, oh, and there will be a time where you can just release it. I mean, let it go. And it can shift for you, but it will happen when you're not expecting it, most likely. Right. The more you're like, doing it from away, I need to go away, it's going to stay even stronger. Right. It's really just from the space of like, I'm just going to have a date with my impatience this month, and we're going to hang out and we're going to have a good time. And I really want to get to know her, So kind of letting go of the agenda and really allow yourself to experiment with that.
I love that. And as a 3 line, obviously, I get the whole experimentation piece. The other thing that this could be interesting because I give people some context. So because of my purpose being 35, I actually changed my core values because of this, because reading it, something resonated with me. So I always had growth as a core value. And I started questioning this a little bit last year because I think growth can be a little bit, the kind of constant pursuit of growth can be a little bit toxic. And I was like, what am I looking for? Like when I say growth, what is it? Like, do I need to grow my team or do I need to grow my revenue? I was like, no, growth isn't about that. It was always about kind of personal growth for me. And then when I read about my purpose and I read this and about being adventure and just the whole Gene Keys concepts, in total, I realized that it wasn't growth, and I actually changed it to exploration because that felt much more aligned because it's not outcome based. It's just about what do I love to do. So then, and that was I do my core values at least twice a year. And that was the first time in about 7 years that it had changed because I felt like growth just was the wrong focus. But when I changed it to exploration, because, adventure obviously is their purpose. And I was like, oh, there are so many things that are important to me, like travel, because I love to explore. I'm a huge questioner, which is in my other gene keys. Obviously, I'm a coach. I love asking questions.
Yeah.
I love to learn. Like it's the exploration aspect of these things. So it was just that word when, that feels so much better. It's the same thing. I'm always expanding. I'm always expanding my horizons, but it didn't feel so much pressure as growth.
Yeah, I love that. That's very similar to what I said about the slowing down to quantum leap, and I dropped the quantum leap. It's the same, because we're not here to chase, because with growth, like you say, it's always like, I'm not good where I'm at. I need to grow, right? And we never kind of win the chase. And this is so aligned for you, what you were just saying, because exploration is the energy of the 35 plus. It's in the tree line for you, right? Which is also, in quantum human design, the tree line is called the explorer. So, and it's about adventure. And let's explore who you are. Let's explore what works for you. Let's become curious about it. So we've been your 63 with that. And so your purpose gene key is you see this in the gene keys chart. Everything lays on that. It's the foundation.
Yeah, it's the bottom. Yeah.
It's the bottom, right? So the more you feel grounded in that, the more powerful it is, and the more better and powerful you can hold space for other people with that. So, and these are those subtle shifts, right? That no mindset, because if you work with, let's say, somebody on this from a mind level, we create something that we think is successful, or that we think we should be. But here you let go of what makes sense, but what feels right to you. And that's really where, it's so beautiful with the gene keys, because we can get those words about who we are, and you're going to attract a whole probably different type of people as well, right?
Yeah.
And are not in this growth chase mentality where you also may feel a lot of pressure as a coach, right? But doing more with people that are, I feel like, a little bit more relaxed and more like, okay, let's see what's possible. We really don't know, right? Let us figure it out. Figure it out in a way of being curious and without any kind of agenda. So that's just beautiful that you did that.
I love that. And I'm just looking at the chart now and my evolution. The shadow of that is confusion. And that was an interesting one for me, because I would get very impatient, which goes back over to my rages. If I wasn't clear on something, if I didn't have clarity on the thing right then, like, what does this program need to look like? Or what does my pricing need to be? Or what's my marketing strategy? And I would definitely feel like that was something I had to rush towards getting that clarity. But now I'm very much like, I don't really know, but it will come to me. And it's enabled me to, rather than searching and rushing it and trying to get, and thinking that lack of clarity is a bad thing. Now I'm just like, but I have to have that kind of confusion before I can piece everything together and make sense of it. So it's having that trust that it will drop in, usually when I'm walking or cooking or doing something where I'm not taking on more information.
And it's like you can see the confusion in your case with evolution. The shadow is your access point to the illumination, the clarity that arises eventually. Without the confusion, you're not going to have the clarity.
Yeah.
And we tend to think, I need to get rid of the confusion. I need to figure it out. And then we force something that may make us feel good in the moment, but in the long term, it creates even more confusion, because we didn't really be with the confusion and just let it be there. And that's what you're saying. And all of a sudden, we're no longer expecting it.
Yeah. I am.
Wow, this is how it is.
I'm embracing the confusion, which is something that I never thought I'd say. And my life's work, the last one, may as well just touch on this one of the first sequence. But this kind of idea of doubt and inquiry, as well as the shadow and the gift, that's something that I feel like I can be a healthy skeptic. Like, doubt can be good, because I can doubt something as in, and it will be like, I'm not sure about this. Let me explore it further. So it's not just having doubt and being negative. It's doubting something, but it's like turning it into that inquiry of like looking into it a little bit further and finding my way through it. So that one felt very aligned when I read it, because I felt like, I think I do that.
Mm. Yeah, it's good. And you see, you're very in line with those energies and they make sense for you. And you're actually using the shadow in a positive light, right? And that's really what this is all about. It's not the shadow. It's not a bad thing. Again, without the shadow, we cannot really get into the inquiry, right? And then have the truth come through for us. So yeah. And that's the energy you put out into the world. That's also your, when you go to the Pearl sequence eventually, that's what your brand is. This energy is also a lot for your brand, what you put out there, right? And it's like, yeah, let's question that. Let's question the status quo. Let's question like what's going on in the coaching industry. Let's question, do we really have to eliminate all these so-called limiting beliefs? Maybe it's all a bunch of BS, right? Who knows? Because we so easily, like, I feel like take on what other people are saying as true. You know, so you may be like a shapeshifter in the way of like, let's question the status quo. Like, let's use a little healthy doubts.
I feel like that happens a lot with us sensitive and empaths as well. It's very easy to take on other people's truth or to take on other people's fear and, you know, just, you know, take it as gospel and then maybe takes us a bit longer to go in and question it. So I love that you brought that up. And I'm going to put a link to my chart in the show notes in case anyone wants to look so you can kind of follow what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Analena, without talking to you for about 70 hours, which I still don't think we would cover even anywhere near this because it is a huge topic. So thank you for giving us like a little brief intro overview and hopefully whetting people's appetites. Obviously I'm going to put your links in the show notes, all the places people can find you, your website, your wonderful Instagram and your lovely podcast. But before I let you go, I was going to ask you, first off, and I think I might know the answer to this one, what book would you recommend anyone listening to this episode who is looking to start or grow their business?
Yeah, like I think I mentioned it already in the episode, right? It's really that art of contemplation book. Yeah. It's such a little one. It's so life-changing. But of course, you got to be ready for it. It has to feel right and good to you. And you may be like, there's not enough information in it, but that book, it's really like balm to the soul.
Beautiful. I'm going to pop that link in the show notes. And lastly, what is the biggest belief shift or reframe or, you know, new kind of thought you have had to adopt to allow you to be as successful as you are now?
But that I have the answers. It's not something outside of me, you know, because I was always looking for like, oh, this person knows they are successful. Like there's always like this projection where we think it's something outside of us. And also, especially being highly sensitive, right? Like you say, we take on these other beliefs very, very easily. And through human design and the gene keys and all that, I have really learned it's like we got it all wrong, literally. It's so flipped, so turned.
Yeah.
It's not about doing more, figuring out more. It's not about more information. It's about less is more. And that's where the simplicity comes in. And it's like, you have all these answers within yourself. And this is why the people that have the really most grounded, sustainable success in life, they're going to tell you like, oh yeah, I meditate every day, X amount of time, or once a year, I go on a 4-week thing to just meditate. You will hear this over and over and over and over again. So slow down, go more inward. No matter how it is, there's not one right modality to meditate, or it's like we need to get out of our head and into our body, into our heart. That's what everything is that you have been looking for your entire life. Now, it may be uncomfortable, but that journey is the most worthwhile journey you can ever go on.
Oh, thank you so much. That's such a lovely ending. Everyone listening, I really hope that you will go and investigate a little bit about the Gene Keys because it just truly is, like you say, balm for the soul. So thank you for coming and sharing that with us. It's always a pleasure to see you.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ambitious Introvert podcast with me, Emma-Louise Parks. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on iTunes. As a thank you, one lucky reviewer each month will win a 60-minute one-on-one coaching session with me, where you'll get the clarity and confidence to attract your ideal clients. And if you know someone who could benefit from listening to the show, then please do share and help me reach as many fellow ambitious introverts as possible.